Star Wars tabletop gaming is proudly supported by Gatekeeper Games, your key to gaming unplugged, a tabletop games store offering a friendly atmosphere for people to buy and play their games in the north of Fitzroy. So, last week we did our very first battle report, our first Legion battle report, and it went really well. We proxied the miniatures with Imperial Assault, we proxied tokens with Armada and Destiny tokens, and we used the rules that I'd thrown together of all of the demos and the cards that I managed to print of the shots that we got from General Games and from FFG. And it was a roaring success. So what that's given me is a bit of an idea of how the units work and how they operate. So in this episode, I want to give you a bit of an analysis of each of the different units, how they perform on the battlefield, and how you should expect to be utilizing them in your future games. So first up, we have the Stormtroopers. They are your base for your Empire armies and form a really solid troop unit. They're a little bit more expensive than Rebel Troopers, I think by just 4 points. You can see their card up there in the top right corner. So they have 1 health per trooper. Their weapons at range are absolutely trash. They're actually better in close combat with black dice. Their E11 blasters, the white dice there, does not hit very often. I think it's only, even with the surge, a 3 out of 8 chance to hit. It may be even worse than that. But essentially, what you want to be doing with these guys is getting them into position behind cover, because their armor is actually really good. So if you get them behind cover, you'll have a good chance of keeping them alive. You want to get in position, you want to stay firm, and you want to be aiming each turn. That's because of their special ability or their power. Special rules, there we go, precise 1. That means when you have a aim token on them, you can re-roll up to 1 additional dice, which really comes in handy with your white token. So use these guys to get onto an objective, sit tight behind some cover, try not to move, and just lay down as much fire as possible. Their special weapons, I think, will be very important for this unit and will make a big difference to the unit, but we'll discuss upgrades in a future episode. So that is your Imperial Stormtroopers. The Rebel Troopers. So the Rebel Troopers are a little different to the Stormtrooper unit in that they're more defensive. So your Stormtroopers have their offensive surge, turning surges to hits, and your Rebel Troopers have a defensive surge, turning their defensive surges to blocks. You can see there their blaster rifles have a black dice, so are more effective than the long-range weapon of the Stormtroopers, and they also have the text Nimble. After defending, if you spent 1 or more dodge tokens, you gain 1 dodge token. So essentially, you also want to get these guys down behind some cover, if possible, because their white defense dice isn't as good, and you want to be giving them dodge tokens turn after turn, because that means that every time a new unit shoots at them, you'll get a new dodge token, which equals 1 block, which may not sound like much, but when your opponent's only getting 2 or 3 hits, maybe even less with their bad shooting from Stormtroopers, that dodge token, if you can get it 2 or 3 times in a turn, that makes a big difference. Rebel Troopers, I'm really excited about. I think the miniatures especially are absolutely fantastic. And I think they're a really, really good troop unit to get behind some cover and just stay put and lay down some pretty accurate fire with black dice. They're pretty good. So that is your Rebel Trooper units for your Rebel Alliance armies. Next up, we have the speeder bikes. So the speeder bikes are fantastic. They have both offensive and defensive surges. Their text reads cover 1, so essentially you've always got soft cover, and speeder 1, which means you have to do a compulsory 3 move as a free action, which sounds fantastic. Definitely gets them into place and gets them around the battlefield very quickly, but makes them not so good for being where you want them to be a few turns later. Essentially, you want to be moving these guys in a bit of a circle. I had an issue with this where I would have loved to stay and shoot those rebel units at the back there during the battle that we had, but they had to keep moving, so I was able to circle around Luke with a little prior planning. And as I get better at using the unit, I think I would have been fine. I would have been running rings around those Rebel Troopers and probably actually getting behind them and negating their cover as well, because I would have been able to fly over buildings. So definitely something to take into consideration when using your speeder bikes. Their weapons from their front arc are fantastic, with 1 of each of the 3 dice, which was a pain when proxying it. But also their holdout blasters are really good as well, which have that 360 arc. So you can do some circle maneuvers and not worry about losing too much fire firepower with 2 black dice. Obviously not as good as the front, but in a pinch, and when you've got to get around and focus on certain units, really good. 3 health, lasted a long time, but you don't really want them to be shot at because that white defense dice isn't so good. Their upgrade slots, there's not many of them. They only have 1 compared to kind of the 4 of the Imperial Stormtroopers. So just take that into consideration in the future. The AT-AT. The AT-AT didn't perform too well in the game we played, mainly because I got Darth Vader into combat with it and sliced it apart kind of in 2 activations. However, against anything else, the AT-AT is going to do a really good job. So it has a blaster rifle, that's just what the guy on top's armed with, but you can arm this with better weapons. So we were using the laser cannon in our game, which, God, what was it? It was good. It was a whole bunch of dice and laid down some serious fire. The rules that it has, so it's got armor. It's a climbing vehicle, which means it can move pretty well over terrain. Talk about armor quickly. So all hit results are cancelled. Only crit results get through, or things that have impact turn hit results to crit results. So against regular troops, these things are going to come out on top every time because your normal troopers are going to be shooting at this thing very ineffectually. So that's good news. So what you want to do with this one is get it into a bit of a fire lane, away from Darth Vader or away from any rocket launchers, and try and focus down on troops. Because if they're the only ones that can shoot back at it, they're going to have a real tough time, especially with the 6 health that it has. It also turns its surges into crits, not just hits, into crits, which means it's going to do really good work against opposing vehicles, which is something to keep in mind in the future. Its grappling claw, if it gets into close combat, or whatever we're calling it, is really good. 3 red dice is fantastic. That's getting, that's half of what Vader does, but just for an AT-AT, which only costs, 55 points there? That's fantastic. I want to see a few of these on the table. All right, now we're getting into our HQ units, or command units, I think Legion's calling them. So here we have Luke Skywalker. So Luke has jump. He has a bunch of other stuff, but jump and charge are going to be a lot of what we see Luke doing. He also has that blaster pistol with 2 red dice. His lightsaber is obviously fantastic at 6 black dice, but be aware that Vader has 6 red dice. So most times, even though in the battle we played, Rhett managed to come on top and Luke managed to cut down Vader, statistically, that won't always happen and shouldn't really have happened. It was just my poor dice rolling and Rhett's fantastic dice rolling. So what we want to see Luke doing is jumping around the battlefield, really kiting, if you will, a video game term, kiting Vader, shooting off his blaster pistols, diving into troop units and cutting them down apart. He's a lot more maneuverable than Vader, if that's who we're comparing them, which in the core set box we definitely are. And with deflect, he'll do some great work against speeder bikes, being shot at, and also against troopers shooting at him as well. So the way I want to use Luke when the core set comes out is to move around the battlefield as quick as possible, focusing on those kind of fragile trooper units, cutting them down before jumping on, and he can be firing his blaster pistol as he goes. So that is Luke Skywalker. I think he's fantastic. He'll do a lot of work, and I think he's going to make or break the Rebels in Wave 1, and I think he's going to make them. So Vader, the counterpart of Luke. So Vader is a lot slower. He doesn't have any courage. Now, we're not exactly sure what that means compared to Luke's 3 courage, but apparently FFG has said in some cases you want to have courage for various reasons. So just keep that in mind. He's got 2 more health than Luke. He has deflect just like Luke. He has immune pierce just like Luke. He has relentless, which is kind of a different version of charge, but better when you start putting things like lightsaber throw on him. In the game we were playing, we did not have any upgrades, so Vader, his slowness really shone through. So Master of the Force is going to be huge, and that means during the end phase, you may ready one of your Force upgrade cards. That's really good, and that means you're going to be able to get a lightsaber throw off every single turn, which will do 3 red damage at range 1 to 2, I believe. So his slowness won't be too much of a consideration. Getting him across the board, super hard. So I guess you want to use him, I don't know, defensively, or your opponent's going to be aware of how slow he is, and he's going to be moving away from him. So keep that in mind and use that with your tactics. But certainly if there's an objective in the middle of the table and you both have to grab it, putting Vader on it is going to make it very difficult for your opponent to claim it. He is just a powerhouse. Who cares if he's slow when he's rolling 6 red dice, which is just insane. So I'm extremely excited about Vader, and hopefully next time I can not get him killed. So that is all of the units from the core set for Star Wars Legion. Here we see just a bit of a shot of what they look like in their plastic form and some of the things you get in the core box set. A good look at the tokens specifically and also those, what are we calling them? I guess cover, what's the word? Barricades that you get in the core set as well. Now those barricades are going to be really significant. You're going to want to have them on your table because when you've only got buildings, cover can be a little tricky because you want to be kind of poking your head out, but that's not really practical because then you have to move to get good shots. It's not great. So these kind of barricades scattered around the battlefield will be really useful for getting behind, getting some good cover, and making the cover mechanic a lot more simple than trying to use just buildings. So keep that in mind when designing your tables. You're going to want to have places for these and other like barricade things as well if these don't specifically do it for you. So, thanks for watching. That's a bit of a rundown of the units that we've got in Legion. Hopefully that'll get your brain ticking over on how you want to use them and whether the Rebels or the Imperial side might be for you. In our next episode, we're going to be taking a look at the order cards that we use throughout the game and kind of the advantages they give you and how they really change the gameplay turn to turn. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.